5. We are glad that you are here today, and I'm excited to be bringing this message to you as we are going to be concluding Esther in the book of Esther. And last time we left off at a real pivotal point for everybody, and we kind of left you guys hanging. And so hopefully some of you remember that and return to hear the rest of the story. If you didn't, it doesn't matter, you're going to get it anyway. But before we jump into our story for tonight, I want us to kind of get on the same page with the idea we're going to look at in Esther tonight. And that is this. A lot of times when we go to a movie, we see this amazing picture just thrown up there for us. And we're watching these amazing action scenes or love scenes and all of these different things, and it's just amazing to watch. However, if you were to look at the background footage, the making of a movie, there would be, and I've got some footage here for you, there would be some major question marks about what is going on and what's happening. All I see is a bunch of green, some dirt, and some dudes fighting. I don't even know what's going on. And so when we look at it, it becomes more and more difficult to understand what the big picture is. This clip is actually from Avengers Endgame, all right? And as you can see, now it's moving to some clips of Robert Downey Jr. in that famous I Am Iron Man snap at the end of the movie. Probably one of the most iconic moments in the last 10 to 15 years. But here's the deal that you might not know about this. Robert Downey Jr. didn't want to do this scene, all right? Because this taping, this scene that you're watching right now, happened about 2 or 3 months after they had wrapped filming. He was already shooting on another movie somewhere. And they called him up after they were editing the movie, and they go, hey, this isn't right, we need to fix it. He needs to say something. And one of the editors said, he's got to say, I am Iron Man. So they called him up, and they go, hey, RDJ, we need you to come shoot this film. And he's like, look, guys, you killed off my character. So I've moved on. I'm out of here. I don't really want to do it. I'm working on another movie. I have to grow that stupid goatee back. He's like, I don't want to do it. I don't understand why you need me to do it. And they begged and they begged and begged. And finally he comes back and he shoots the scene. And it becomes one of the greatest one-liners in the last 10, 15, 20 years that we've ever seen. They went to extreme lengths in making this movie. Everything was matched up. It was mixed and matched together. They never knew what scene they were getting. When they received their scripts, everything but their lines were blacked out. They even told Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man, that the Tony Stark funeral scene was a wedding. They went to great lengths to make sure that no one knew what was happening, that everything was mixed up. And if you're just watching these scenes, you look at it and go, man, I don't even know what's going on. But behind the scenes, behind everything that was going on, there was an editor, there was a director, 2 directors. And they knew what the big picture was. They knew the plan. They knew the end game. And they began working on it. And in our lives, it's the same way. Because in our lives, there is a great director out there who knows the end. He knows the beginning. He knows the middle. He knows everything that's happening and everything that we go through. And we have to learn to trust him. Because God is behind the scenes putting everything together, even though we may not understand it. And that's what I want us to look at tonight. As we finish this story, we will clearly see where God is acting and putting things together from behind the scenes to accomplish his will and his goal. So, let's jump into our story for tonight. Our story starts where we left off last week. We had met the young girl named Esther, who was an orphan raised by her cousin Mordecai. She ascended and became queen of all of Persia. She was married to the king Xerxes, who most of you may know from the movie 300, the great god king that they portray in that movie. He didn't actually look like that. He was actually quite different, but that's the same character. Okay, not same character, that's the same guy. Just to give you an idea of who Xerxes is. And so she became queen, and everything was going good until this one man by the name of Haman comes onto the picture. And Haman begins raising trouble because he ascends up the ladder. He becomes second in command of Persia. He's very proud of his wealth, of his land, of who he's become. And Mordecai, Esther's cousin who raised her, doesn't bow down to him. And so he comes up with this plot that he is going to kill all of the Jews. Not just Mordecai, all of the Jews. So he sets a date 9 months in the future at this point, and says, on this date, and he sends out a decree sealed with the king's signet, on this day, every enemy of the Jews can rise up against them and kill them, and there's nothing the Jews can do. And so he put together this slaughter. Well, Mordecai heard this, and he went out and he began to mourn. Esther, unfortunately, wasn't able to hear this news. She was protected inside the palace. So Mordecai was able to get word to her through his mourning. And in doing so, he asked her to approach the king. She was a little bit hesitant. Because if you approach the king without an invitation, and he did not extend his scepter to you, you would be killed on the spot. And so she reminded Mordecai of this. And he tells her, hey, just remember, maybe this is why you're queen. And so she tells Mordecai, I want you to fast for 3 days. And I'm going to fast for 3 days. And then on the third day, I will approach the king. And so she gets ready on the third day. They fast. She gets ready. She puts on her makeup. She puts on a nice dress. I don't know what she put on, but she got looking nice. All right? And she goes and she approaches. And as she approaches the throne room, I am sure that the king is on his throne and all of his advisors are around, and they're talking about issues of the state. They're dealing with problems that have come in from the land. And all of a sudden, the doors open up, and in walks Esther. And I bet you could hear a pin drop in that room as all of these advisors looked and went, she didn't have an invitation. This is about to get interesting. And they all look towards the king. And he sees her. And he knows the law. And deep down, he kind of gets this thought. There's a reason that she would risk her life to come and talk to me. So he willingly extends his scepter. And she comes to him. And he says to her, Esther, what can I do for you? Ask of me anything, and I will give you up to half the kingdom. And she goes, oh, great king, I would like to invite you and Haman to a banquet that I have prepared in your honor. So please come and join me. So he agrees. And they go off, and they go to this great banquet. But deep down, he knows there's something else underneath there. And he's trying to figure out what it is. And so in the course of the meal, he asks her again. He goes, hey, this was great and all, but that's not why you risked your life. Why? What do you need? Whatever you need, you ask of it, and I will give it to you up to half of my kingdom. And she says, oh, great king, my wish is that you and Mordecai will join me again tomorrow for another banquet that I will prepare in your honor. King's kind of like, all right, well, at least there's going to be food. He's kind of a little bit perturbed because he wanted to know what her question was. He knew that that wasn't the reason she came into his throne room. And so he went his way, and Esther went and began to prepare for the banquet tomorrow. Mordecai, on the other hand, he was feeling pretty good about himself. He was walking tall. Can't believe this. Not only am I rich, not only do I have a lot of land, not only am I the second most powerful man in all the land, I got invited to a banquet for just the queen and the king. I'm a pretty awesome dude. And so he heads home to tell his family about what has happened. But on the way, he passes by the gate, which is where Mordecai works. And as he passes the gate, all of the servants and all of the workers in the gate, they stand up, they acknowledge him, they bow, they recognize who he is. But as he passes Mordecai, Mordecai just stays seated. And Haman is getting frustrated, and he's getting mad. He doesn't say anything right there. He composes himself as the second in command that he is, as how excited as he is about what happened in his day. And he goes and he runs on home. But he's a little upset that morning. And so he gets home and he starts telling everybody, you won't believe my day. I mean, look at all my kids. I got 10 boys. Who else can boast that in this land? I've got all the money in the world. I've got all of this land. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got all these friends. And they're sitting there like, yeah, you're the man, Mordecai. Or Haman, you're the man. We love you. Ah! Everybody's going crazy for him. And they're just building him up. But then all of a sudden his wife goes, what's wrong? What's bothering you? And she goes, Haman goes, it's that stupid Mordecai again. I walked by him and he didn't even acknowledge me. He just acted as if I was anybody else. Does he not know who I am? Does he not know how rich and powerful and how amazing I am? And his wife goes, why don't you just kill him? And he goes, that's a good idea. How should I do it? And she says, why don't you build a gallows? Build a huge gallows and go tomorrow and ask the king if you can kill Mordecai and then hang him up so everyone can see what happens to somebody who doesn't show you respect. And he goes, that's brilliant. And he gathers up his servants and he oversees the building of this gallows, 75 foot high, that he's going to hang Mordecai on. All right, now, there's two types of gallows. There's the kind with the noose, all right, that we're most common with, but there's a second type of gallows that is more than likely the gallows that they built. And basically what it is it's a big platform with a huge spike on it, and they run the spike through the person that's going to be dying, and then they just let him hang there up in the air so everybody can see him. So neither one's pleasant, but those are the two types of gallows that this could be. All right? So basically they skewer him up there. All right? And so Haman stays up all night building this gallows, supervising the gallows being built. He's excited. He wakes up first thing in the morning and he heads off to the king's, to the throne room to speak to the king about killing Mordecai. And he is excited. Pep in his step. I'm going to kill Mordecai. I'm going to kill Mordecai. And I'm going to eat with the king. And I'm going to eat with the king. So he's on cloud 9 right now, all right? So he's up there. Well, at the same time, the same night, King Xerxes, he couldn't sleep either. It doesn't say why. It could have been for any number of reasons, but he couldn't sleep. So what he did is, to help him fall asleep, like most of us would do, you'd have somebody read you a boring book, all right? He had him open up the logs from the years past, and they began reading all of the day's activities. You gave so many sheep to so-and-so. You took land from this person. You conquered this town on this day. And they happened to run across the time when Mordecai discovered a plot to kill the king. And so he saved the king's life. And the king goes, what did we do for this Mordecai? And they go, we didn't do anything. He goes, this guy saved my life and we didn't do anything? He goes, I need to figure out some way to honor this man. So he says, go to the court and see who is waiting in there. Because you see, there was a court where all of his advisors would gather. And they would come and they would advise him on whatever it was. And so the servants go out and they look in the court and they go, hey, only Haman's down there. And he goes, bring him up to me. And he goes, all right. So they go down, and Haman's in the court waiting for the king. I'm going to kill Mordecai. I'm going to kill Mordecai. I'm going to kill Mordecai. Hey, Haman, the king wants to see you. I'm going to go see the king. I'm going to go see the king. And he gets there, and the king goes, hey, Haman, how do you think I should honor a man that I want to honor? And Haman, he's so high on cloud 9, he's all, oh, he wants to honor me. This is going to be awesome. He's like, I got money. I got land. Ooh, I know. He says, you should take a robe that you've worn, king, and you should put it on this man. And you should take a horse that you have ridden, and you should put him on this horse. And you should have some of your advisors parade him through town and say, this is how we want you to honor a man. And the king goes, that's a great idea. Grab a robe, grab a horse, take it to Mordecai the Jew, and you parade him through town and tell everybody that I'm honoring him. Man, talk about irony. All right? So he goes and he obeys the king, And he takes Mordecai and he dresses him up. He puts him on the horse and he parades him through town. And then he runs home in shame with his head covered. And he falls down in front of his wife and his friends. And he's like, I can't believe this. You are not going to believe my day. And his friends try to warn him. They go, hey, if you couldn't have beat him this morning, you better be careful because bad things may be coming your way. And he's like, no, it doesn't matter. It's okay. I'm going to a banquet with the king and the queen. Everything is going to be okay. All right? And so before they can help console him, before he can get fully ready, the servants of the king and of Esther come and they grab him and they take him away to a banquet. And they're eating at this banquet. They're eating at this banquet. And they're sitting there and they're eating. And the king finally looks up and he goes, Esther, what is it that you want? Why have you called me? Remember, you can ask anything up to half my kingdom and I will give it to you. She looks at the king and she says, my king, if I have found favor in your eyes, if I have done good to you, would you please spare my life and spare the life of my people? Because they have been sold to slaughter. If they would have been sold into slavery, I would not have brought this up to you. It's not that important of a matter. But they have been sold and paid for that they may be killed and slaughtered. And he looks at her and he goes, who has done this? Who has done this to you? Tell me now who has done this. She goes, the evil Haman. He did this. He signed this decree. And the king is shocked. And he's furious. He slams down his wine and he walks out into the garden. And he begins to think, because he has to choose. Okay? You have to remember at this time, he's a God king. He can't do anything wrong. So how is he going to fix this problem? Haman, yes, Haman was the one who came up with the idea. Haman's the one who paid. Haman's the one who sent out the decree. But Haman also received the signet ring of the king. And he signed the signet ring of the king on the decree, meaning that the king would be the one who did this heinous act. So does he side with his lovely queen? Does he side with his number 2 in command? What is he going to do? He can't just often kill Haman for wanting to kill the Jews, because then that'll look bad as if he had done something wrong. So he needs a way to figure it out. Meanwhile, as he's thinking these things over and trying to figure out what to do, Esther has gone and has sat down worried about what the king is going to respond. And she's sitting on this couch. And as she's sitting on this couch, Haman gets down, please help me, please forgive me. Please forgive me. I didn't know. I'm sorry. And he throws himself across her and he goes, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Don't hate this. Don't hurt me. Don't do anything. And he is begging for his life. The same guy who's upset because Mordecai would not bow down before him, would not stand up and recognize him, is now on his knees before a Jewish woman begging for his life. And he's there begging, laid across her. And the king walks in and he sees this and he goes, Haman, what are you doing? How dare you attack the queen? Because here's the deal. It was against the law for any man or advisor of the king to approach one of the king's wives. You had to stay 7 feet away from them, or it was considered assault and an attack on them. And so he, in trying to save his life, doomed himself. And the king looks at him and he goes, what are we going to do with you? And the servants come over and they put a hood over his head. And one of the servants, and this is my favorite guy, he's awesome. He comes out, he's got one line, and it's the best line in the book. And he comes out and he goes, hey, just so you know, Haman built the gallows 75 feet tall in his own yard. Maybe we could use that to kill him. My favorite guy, right? My favorite guy. And so King Xerxes goes, yep, let's Let's do it. All right? And so he takes him and he hangs him on his own gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. All right? And the estate of Haman is given to Esther. All right? It is given to Esther. She reveals who she is. She reveals who Mordecai is. Mordecai is made an advisor. He is given Haman's estate by Esther, and he lives there and now is a top advisor in the king's court. They were able to send out a decree that the Jews could defend themselves. And on the day of the decree, the Jews were able to succeed and prevent their lives from dying. Keep themselves from dying. And now, along with Esther, the Jews had a spokesman in the court of Persia as Mordecai looked out for the Jews. And here's the deal, guys. I'm going to be real quick to finish this up. This story is amazing. This story is fascinating because there's so many little things that had to happen in order for everything to be perfect. And when we see this story, at first, it's difficult to kind of pick out. Everything seems to be going downhill. But then as it plays out, God is in control. And he's behind the scenes. Guys, we have to remember that when things are going bad, we need to remain humble like Esther, trusting that God is in control, that he is over us. We need to approach the kings and the rulers and the leaders in our life with the same respect she approached King Xerxes. We need to be humble when things are going bad. The second thing we need to know is that when things are going good, when life is treating us great, we need to resist the pride of life. We need to resist being like Haman and becoming prideful, thinking that everything we've been given, everything that we have was earned by ourselves. Because the truth is, it is God who has blessed us with those things. But most of all, we need to understand that God is behind the scenes. That God has a plan and a purpose. He's like the director of a movie. He knows the big picture. He's watching the big picture. We may not understand why we have to do this scene or why we're having to go through this or why this negative thing has happened, but he does. And he's putting us in the right places for the right times. We can just look at this story. Esther being queen is a huge thing. But it only happens if God is in control. Esther's timing was so huge, and I think we underestimate this portion of it. All right? If Esther would have busted into the court, and the king would have gone, Esther, what do you want from me? And she goes, Haman tried to kill me and all my people. It wouldn't go over well, would it? Because the timing in the courtroom was not right. It wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right place. It needed to be in private. It needed to be brought up appropriately. If it wasn't for her timing and for the patience that God granted her, it all could have gone the wrong way. What about the king's sleeplessness? What if he would have fallen asleep that night and not been up having his logs read to him? Would he have found out that Mordecai had not been rewarded for his good deeds? And then we look at Haman's obsession. His obsession with killing Mordecai and being there first thing in the morning to ask the king to kill Mordecai. If he hadn't have been there, let's say that he wasn't obsessed with Mordecai, all right? And he would have been 2 hours later. He wouldn't have been there to lead Mordecai around and have to claim, hey, this guy saved the king, he's honored. He wouldn't have had to do that. He would have missed out on that humiliation. But it worked out with perfect timing. And then the king's return, right? The king returns right at the right time as Haman is begging Esther for his life. You see, all along the way throughout this story, we see how God is behind the scenes working everything out to be perfect. We need to understand that. We need to trust in Him. We need to resist and remove pride from our lives in time of success. And we need to be humble. Because humility is one of the most important acts of the Christian life. Esther was humble. And just like Esther was humble, and she went out and she pled for the lives of her people. Several thousand years later, another king humbled himself for his people. And Jesus left the throne room and the comforts of heaven. He became man and added man to himself. He came down to this earth. He lived the life that each and every one of us has lived. And then at the crescendo, at the end of his life, he was beat. He was whipped. He was crucified and killed to save us. Because you see, we all face a debt. We face the debt of sin. And that debt is death. And either we can pay it or we can trust in Jesus. And He will pay it for us. So will you turn? Turn today before you are caught before the throne of God. And there's no more chances for you to ask Him to pay your penalty. Let's pray. Here in just a minute, we're going to be playing some music.